Today I'm going to tell you about 31-year-old Khadija al-Mahmoud's story from Gaza, Palestine. Standing in her small kitchen, holding the last piece of bread in her hands, she faced the most heartbreaking decision any mother could imagine. With 3 hungry children looking up at her with desperate eyes, which child would she feed? Which child would go to sleep hungry that night? If you're a parent watching this, your heart will break knowing that somewhere in the world, mothers are forced to make such impossible choices. If you believe no mother should ever have to choose which child to feed, please subscribe to our channel so these important stories can reach people who can make a difference. What decision did Khadija make that night? And how did one mother's impossible choice become a symbol of hope for an entire community? Stay with me until the end to discover this extraordinary story of maternal love and sacrifice. 31-year-old Khadija al-Mahmoud was known throughout her neighborhood in the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza as the mother who always found a way. No matter how little money her family had, no matter how scarce food became, she somehow always managed to put something on the table for her 3 beloved children. Her husband Mahmoud had worked as a taxi driver before the conflict escalated, but for the past 8 months, there had been no work, no income, and no way to provide for the family. Their small savings had run out months ago, and they had already sold everything of value they owned, Khadija's gold wedding bracelet, Mahmoud's watch, even their old television, just to buy food for the children. Khadija's 3 children were her entire world. 8-year-old Ahmad was her eldest, a responsible boy who had learned to help his mother without being asked and never complained when meals were small or when there were no meals at all. 6-year-old Layla was her only daughter, a bright and curious child who still believed that tomorrow would bring better days, despite everything she had witnessed. And 4-year-old Omar was her baby, too young to understand why his stomach hurt from hunger, but old enough to ask, "Mama, when will we eat?" with eyes that broke her heart every single day. As a mother, Khadija had developed an almost supernatural ability to stretch whatever little food they had. She could make a single can of beans feed 4 people for 2 days. She knew how to prepare lentil soup so thin it was almost just flavored water, but she would serve it with such love and tell such entertaining stories during the meal that her children would feel satisfied and happy. But by October, even Khadija's miraculous ability to create meals from nothing was reaching its limits. The local shops were often empty, prices for basic food items had increased beyond what any family could afford, and humanitarian aid was sporadic and unpredictable. If this story is already touching your heart as a parent, please give it a like. Can you imagine looking into your own children's hungry eyes and not knowing how you'll feed them tomorrow? Let's continue with Khadija's incredible journey of motherhood in the most impossible circumstances. Every morning, Khadija would wake up before her children and sit quietly in her small kitchen, trying to plan the day's meals with whatever little they had left. She kept a small notebook where she wrote down every piece of food in their house, half a bag of flour, a few potatoes, some dried lentils, maybe a small piece of cheese if they were lucky. She had developed a system of rationing that ensured her children got something to eat every day, even if it meant she often went without food herself. "Children grow, they need food more than I do," she would tell her husband when he noticed she was getting thinner and weaker. Khadija's greatest skill was making her children feel loved and secure even when their stomachs were empty. During mealtimes, she would tell them stories about magical kingdoms where children were always fed, or she would sing traditional Palestinian lullabies that had been passed down through generations of mothers who had also faced difficult times. "Mama," 6-year-old Layla had asked her just a week before everything changed, "why do you always eat so little? Don't you get hungry like us?" Khadija had hugged her daughter close and said, "My darling, when I see you and your brothers eating and smiling, my heart gets so full that I don't feel hungry anymore. Your happiness is the best food for Mama." But behind her smiles and her songs, Khadija was facing a reality that was becoming more desperate every day. Their food supplies were running dangerously low, and she didn't know where the next meal would come from. October 15th started like many other difficult days in the al-Mahmoud household. Khadija woke up before dawn and went to her small kitchen to see what she could prepare for her family's breakfast. Opening the food cabinet that had once been full of rice, pasta, canned goods, and fresh vegetables, she found almost nothing. There was exactly 1 piece of bread left. 1 small piece of pita bread that could maybe satisfy 1 child's hunger for a few hours, but certainly not 3 children for an entire day. Khadija stood in her kitchen, holding that single piece of bread in her trembling hands, and felt the weight of an impossible decision. Her 3 children would wake up soon, hungry and trusting that their mother would somehow provide for them as she always had. But this morning, for the first time in her life as a mother, she truly didn't know how. She sat at her small kitchen table and tried to think of solutions. Could she somehow stretch this 1 piece of bread to feed all 3 children? Could she mix it with water to make a sort of soup? Could she tell the children a story that would distract them from their hunger until she could figure out another solution? But as she sat there, looking at that small piece of bread, Khadija realized she was facing the decision that haunts every mother in times of scarcity: which child's immediate need should come first? 8-year-old Ahmad was the oldest and biggest, and he had been helping her carry water and do other physical tasks that required energy. 6-year-old Layla had been looking pale and tired lately, and Khadija worried that her daughter wasn't getting enough nutrition. 4-year-old Omar was the youngest and smallest, and children his age needed frequent meals to grow properly. At 7 o'clock in the morning, she heard her children beginning to wake up in the next room. Soon they would come to the kitchen asking for breakfast, looking at her with complete trust that she would take care of them as she always did. Standing there with that last piece of bread in her hands, Khadija made a decision that would change not only her family's life, but touch the hearts of everyone who would later hear this story. Instead of choosing which child to feed, she decided to do something that only a mother's heart could conceive. Can you imagine being in Khadija's position right now? Can you imagine holding your family's last piece of food and having to decide how to distribute it among your hungry children? This is the moment that shows us the true power of a mother's love. Khadija took that single piece of bread and carefully divided it into 4 equal pieces, one for each of her 3 children, and one for herself. Each piece was so small it could barely be called a meal, but she realized that sharing the hunger equally was better than one child being fed while the others went without. When Ahmad, Layla, and Omar came to the kitchen for breakfast, Khadija served each of them their small piece of bread with a little bit of olive oil and a sprinkle of za'atar spice that she had been saving. She sat down with them and ate her own small piece, turning the meal into a family moment rather than a reminder of their scarcity. "Today we're having a special breakfast," she told her children with a smile. "This is called sharing bread, and it's what families do when they want to show how much they love each other." 8-year-old Ahmad, wise beyond his years, looked at his mother and asked quietly, "Mama, is this all the food we have?" Khadija looked into her eldest son's eyes and made a decision to be honest while still maintaining hope. "Right now, this is what we have, my dear Ahmad. But Mama is going to find a way to get more food today. I promise you that." After breakfast, Khadija put on her hijab and prepared to leave the house to search for work, food, or any opportunity that might help her family. She had heard that a nearby family needed someone to help with cleaning, and though the pay would be very small, it might be enough to buy groceries for a few days. "I'll be back before lunch," she told her children, "and I want you to take care of each other while I'm gone. Ahmad, you're the big brother. Layla, you help Ahmad watch Omar. And Omar, you listen to your brother and sister." As she walked through the streets of Jabalia camp, Khadija passed other mothers who she knew were facing similar struggles. She saw Ibrahim carrying empty pots, probably heading to the communal kitchen to see if there was any free food available. She saw Khalil sitting outside her house with a small table, trying to sell a few vegetables from her tiny garden. The sight of other mothers fighting the same battle gave Khadija both comfort and determination. She wasn't alone in this struggle, and somehow, the mothers in her community had always found ways to support each other and survive. When Khadija arrived at the house where she hoped to find cleaning work, she was told that the position had already been filled. Disappointed but not defeated, she walked to the local market to see if any shopkeepers needed help or if there were any opportunities to earn even a small amount of money. At the market, something unexpected happened that would change everything for the Al-Mahmoud family. Khadija met Saeed, an elderly woman who ran a small bakery stall and who had known Khadija's family for years. "Sister Khadija," Saeed said, "you look worried. Is everything all right with your family?" Khadija, who had always been proud and independent, found herself opening up to the kind older woman. She explained her family's situation, their lack of income, and her desperate search for work or any way to feed her children. Saeed listened carefully, and then she made an offer that surprised Khadija. "I've been needing help at my bakery," she said. "The work is early in the morning, starting at 4 o'clock, and it's hard work, mixing dough, carrying flour, cleaning. But I can pay you with both money and bread. Would you be interested?" Khadija felt tears of relief filling her eyes. "Sister Saeed, I would be grateful for any opportunity to work and provide for my children. There's one condition," Saeed added with a knowing smile. "Every day when you finish work, you'll take home enough fresh bread for your entire family. I don't want to hear about any more mornings when the Al-Mahmoud children don't have breakfast." That afternoon, when Khadija returned home carrying fresh bread, vegetables, and hope for the future, her 3 children ran to greet her with excitement and relief. But instead of immediately giving them the food, she sat them down for a family meeting. "My dear children," she said, "today Mama learned something very important. When we shared our last piece of bread this morning, we did something beautiful. We showed that our family stays together no matter what happens. And because we shared what little we had, Allah sent us a blessing. She told them about Saeed's job offer and how their morning of sharing had led to this opportunity. Starting tomorrow, she said, Mama will work at the bakery, and we will have enough food every day. But I never want us to forget this morning, when we learned that sharing makes us stronger. When will all mothers have the security of knowing they can feed their children every day? When will children wake up knowing that breakfast will be waiting for them? Every family deserves the basic dignity of food security, and every mother deserves better than having to make impossible choices. 6 months later, Khadija's life had transformed completely. Her work at Saeed's bakery had not only provided steady income and daily bread for her family, but had also taught her valuable skills in baking and small business management. Saeed, impressed by Khadija's dedication and natural talent, had begun teaching her the recipes and techniques that had been passed down through generations of Palestinian bakers. You have the hands of a baker, Saeed told her, and more importantly, you have the heart of someone who understands the value of bread. Within a year, Khadija had learned enough about the bakery business that Saeed offered to make her a partner. I'm getting older, the kind woman said, and I need someone I trust to help me expand this business. Someone who knows what it means to feed hungry children. Together, they developed a program where the bakery would provide free bread to families in the most desperate situations, families like Khadija's had been. Every morning, they would set aside a portion of their bread production for mothers who were struggling to feed their children. No child in our neighborhood should go hungry if we can help it, Khadija said as she helped organize this community food program. Khadija's 3 children had also learned important lessons from their family's experience with scarcity and sharing. Ahmad, now 9 years old, had become passionate about helping other families in need. Layla, 7 years old, had started a small project where she would draw pictures and tell stories to entertain younger children whose families were going through difficult times. And Omar, now 5 years old, had developed a habit of always sharing his food with any friend who seemed hungry. The Al-Mahmoud family's experience had taught them that strength comes not from having abundance, but from knowing how to share what you have and how to support each other through difficult times. Today, 2 years after that morning when Khadija held her family's last piece of bread, she has become one of the most respected bakers in Jabalia camp. Her bakery employs 3 other women from the community and provides fresh bread to over 50 families every day. But more importantly, Khadija has become a symbol of how one mother's impossible choice can become the foundation for community support and resilience. Her story has inspired other mothers to start their own small businesses, and her bakery has become a gathering place where women share resources, advice, and mutual support. Every morning, as Khadija prepares fresh bread for the community, she remembers that October morning when she had to divide one piece of bread among her family. That was the day I learned that sharing multiplies rather than divides, she often tells other mothers. When we share what little we have, somehow there ends up being more for everyone. When will the world recognize that supporting mothers like Khadija is not just about charity, it's about creating opportunities that allow families to build sustainable livelihoods and support their communities? When will societies invest in programs that turn desperate mothers into community leaders and small business owners? If you believe that mothers like Khadija should never have to choose which child to feed, if you believe that every family deserves food security and every mother deserves opportunities to provide for her children with dignity, please like this video so this story of impossible choices and extraordinary resilience can reach people who can make a difference. Right now, thousands of people are watching this story of a mother's love and a community's response. Let's make sure Khadija's message, that sharing what we have creates abundance for everyone, reaches every corner of the world. Can you imagine if your own mother had been forced to divide your family's last piece of bread? Can you imagine if your own sister had to choose which of her children to feed? Think about the mothers in your community. How many might be making impossible choices in silence, needing not just sympathy but real opportunities to provide for their families? Every like, every comment shows that mothers like Khadija and children like Ahmad, Layla, and Omar are not forgotten. If you believe that every child deserves to wake up knowing that breakfast will be waiting, leave a Palestinian flag emoji in the comments. Subscribe to our channel to show that you stand with mothers who turn impossible choices into community transformation. Tomorrow we'll bring you another story that will remind you of the incredible strength that emerges when communities support mothers who refuse to give up. Don't miss it. Subscribe so we can continue sharing these important stories of maternal love, community resilience, and hope from Palestine. Will you share a prayer for families like the Al-Mahmouds and all the community bakeries that support them in the comments? They need our recognition, our support, and our commitment to creating opportunities that allow mothers to provide for their children with dignity. Show your reaction, let them know that their choices, their strength, and their community leadership matter, and that the world believes every mother deserves the security of being able to feed her children. Note, the names mentioned in this story have been changed for privacy purposes. This story is inspired by real events experienced by mothers and families during times of crisis in Palestine.